Hello, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Hannah Fernandez, and you're watching SCORE TV. SCORE is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping small businesses across the United States get off the ground, grow, and achieve their goals through education and mentorship. So whether you are a new entrepreneur or you've been in business for a long time, our SCORE mentors could offer you free business mentoring and other resources for the life of your business. To connect with us, check out our website at chicago.score.org. You could email us at info@scorechicago.org or call us at 312-353-7724. Today, we're going to talk about how you can protect your business from cyber attacks. With me is Cyrus Walker, Managing Principal at Data Defenders. Cyrus, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So first, what is Data Defenders, and tell us about your role there.
So Data Defenders is a comprehensive provider of cybersecurity solutions to the marketplace. We provide advisory, response, and managed services to corporate businesses and municipalities to help them protect their information and information technology infrastructures.
And you have been a regular contributor on CNN, Bloomberg, Fox, and other major networks in cybersecurity. So would you share more about your background and experience?
So I'm the managing principal at Data Defenders, and I have about 25 years or so of experience in the field of cybersecurity, computer forensics, and disaster recovery. I spent about 8 years with the Department of Homeland Security, training federal, state, and local law enforcement personnel around the country, and dealing with cyber terrorism, understanding how to investigate it, and understanding how to better protect themselves from cyber terrorism related attacks against their infrastructures. I also spent 6 years as a department chair at Wright College, building their cybersecurity and computer forensics program and training people anywhere from bricklayers to police officers on how to deliver cybersecurity solutions to the marketplace.
Wright College is a special place in my heart because I actually went to Wright College before I transferred over to the University of Chicago.
Okay.
So I'm so glad to go ahead and hear that we're actually interconnected.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
It was a great place.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what are the main reasons why small businesses experience cybersecurity breaches?
So some of the main reasons are small businesses generally lack the resources. They lack the expertise. They lack the technical infrastructure. They lack the personnel to implement cybersecurity countermeasures to prevent themselves from being attacked. And because they lack those three things generally, they're generally seen as a target. Also, most small business owners are wearing many hats. They've got many balls in the air, and the last thing they want to do is add another ball to their plate. And so they generally neglect cybersecurity. Most small businesses think that because they're small fish in a big pond of this business world, if you will, that nobody's going to want to attack them. But that is absolutely not true. 65% of cybersecurity attacks generally happen with small businesses. So that's generally the reason why it happens. They just don't have the resources or expertise to protect themselves.
And cyber criminals, as I'll call it right now, know that. They know that
Absolutely.
Small business owners, they have a lot of data, right?
Right.
But at the same time, like you said, they're either too busy or they just don't have those resources of big corporations to go ahead and protect themselves.
Right, absolutely. It's unfortunate, but in the days of ransomware and where cybercrime has become a financial gain, if you will, or opportunity, if you will, small businesses are ripe for the picking. And so one of the things that we've tried to do is to help small businesses understand the need to protect their information just as important as them taking care of their accounting or their marketing or their human resources needs and requirements. It is as important. Verizon puts out a data breach incident report every year, and about 5 years ago, they estimated that most small businesses that get hit with a major cyber security attack generally go out of business, either because they've lost their data and they can't recover from it, or the attack was so catastrophic that customers would leave. So it extremely important for small businesses to really focus on this because their literal lives are at stake if they don't.
Absolutely. You could paralyze a business or bring it down
Absolutely.
altogether.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And with the boom in technology, cybersecurity threats have also risen.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some common cybersecurity threats that small businesses should be aware of?
Well, the biggest one out there is, so there's two really big ones today. Ransomware is the one that we all know about. We hear about it in the news. It is such a effective attack because it's anonymous. It can happen to anybody at any time. And if you don't have the right countermeasures in place, it is destructive. That generally happens through human behavior. There's no one that's particularly targeting the business. It is a user clicking on an email that they think is familiar, which leads to their data getting encrypted. And when the data gets encrypted, they either have to pay the ransom to get the decryption key in order to release the data, or they generally lose their data. So that's one attack. The next attack is what's called a wire transfer attack, and we're seeing that attack on the rise today. And generally, what that is a user, an employee in a company will get an email stating something related to transferring money from one place to another. A lot of businesses do have that activity. And it's generally a social engineering-based attack because the email looks like it's coming from someone that they know. Typically, someone has hacked into the Office 365 account and sent out an email requesting the transfer to happen. They've been reading the emails to see what's actually going on, and so they appear to be familiar to the person getting the email. That person executes a wire transfer to an account that is held by the malicious attacker. They lose that money. We get calls all the time about employees having either executed the wire transfers or having started the process of executing the wire transfers before it was caught. We had one customer who lost $250,000 as a result of that attack alone. There's a huge financial gain from it, and so that's why you see those two attacks on the rise.
So what you need to do is, before transferring over that money, you need to go ahead and set some systems in place, like
Absolutely.
text your CFO or something for transferring that money, correct?
Right. Those attacks are all about human behavior. And the way to mitigate those attacks is by putting in place processes to make sure that the sender of the email is being verified as valid before that wire transfer is made. In some cases, that's how the attack was caught before the money was transferred. But in most cases, that process wasn't in place and the money was transferred and then lost. So, yeah, you do have to have the right processes and checks and balances in place if you're going to be transferring money like that.
And you mentioned ransomware, and I've heard some small business owners say that sometimes they'll receive an email that would look like it came from Amazon or FedEx, but then if you actually click on that email, it actually says, John Doe at xck.com, and you're like, this is not from FedEx or Amazon.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's the way that they execute these attacks. They appear to be familiar to you through Microsoft or through Amazon. We had one customer who got an email from Microsoft about an update, and people get those emails all the time. This user clicked on the email, and it started to encrypt not only the data on that computer, but it started to replicate itself across the entire organization. And it took them about 6 weeks to recover from that. That's what we call social engineering, because the attackers are attempting to appear as if they are familiar or related to the organization in some way, shape, or form, getting the unsuspecting user to acquiesce to the requested behavior, leading to the data being encrypted or stolen, which does happen in a lot of cases as well.
So these attacks can be crippling for a small business owner. So
Absolutely.
What can small business owners do to immediately raise their level of protection?
So the very first thing with ransomware is you got to have data backups. And those data backups should be offline, meaning if you, for instance, have a flash drive connected to the laptop that's being attacked through ransomware, that flash drive is going to be attacked as well. So you got to have data backups. You have to do them often. And you have to keep them offline in order to protect that data. That's the number one way to counter that attack. Most small businesses don't back up their data. And there are very simple solutions out there that small businesses can use to back up their data on a very regular basis. But again, because of the busyness of the owners and the management, they generally don't get around to that. And they generally don't have anyone on staff that understands that. But again, backing up data is the number one way to counter that attack. The next thing to do is to train your employees not to just click on any email. If you're not expecting an email from someone, call that person up and verify if, in fact, that email came from them. That's a very simple way to understand whether or not the email that you got is true or false. So it's about training your users on their behavior. It's about helping them understand why not using computers for personal use is extremely important. Why not having kids come into your company, sit them at a desk and have them play on the computer, because most times they're going to a site that is infected or is malicious in nature. So user behavior and user training is absolutely important. And again, a lot of times small businesses either don't have the money to train their users or just don't have the time to free up to allow their users to go through that training. But there are resources out there that small businesses can get to provide that training. It's about a heightened level of awareness. You wouldn't take the checkbook and leave it out sitting on the floor or on the desk,
Exactly.
because you're afraid that someone could potentially write fraudulent checks. You have to treat your infrastructure the same way. You have to be very vigilant and very careful with it, because if you're not, you can get hit.
And cyber attacks are an evolving danger to organizations, employees, and consumers. So what steps should small business owners take to protect information about customers and their transactions?
So there are a number of regulations out there that do require businesses, whether small, medium, or large, to provide some basic level of protection on information, especially if it's personally identifiable information or healthcare-related information. One of the basic things they can do is to encrypt that information, whether it be in transit or in storage. That's the best way to protect that information, to protect those transactions. The other thing you can do is acquire a service that provides that holistically, so you don't have to worry about having to implement that on your own. There are a number of credit card purchasing, financial management businesses out there or sites out there that provide that kind of service, so that you don't have to worry about that. If you take credit cards, for instance, there are services out there that will store those credit cards on your behalf in an encrypted manner, so you don't have to worry about doing that. So it's taking advantage of some of those solutions that are available that can offload the security requirement, allowing you to provide that service, but also be secure in doing it.
And let's talk about some financial impact of cybersecurity breaches in small businesses. Can you go ahead and expand on that as well?
Well, like I said before, depending on the type of attack and the success of the attack, it can literally put the business out of business. Generally, what we've seen is it can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to recover from an attack. Some ransomware attacks can be recovered from, especially if they are older attacks and countermeasures have been developed, like encryption keys have been developed to decrypt the data. But if it's a newer ransomware variant, most likely there is no decryption key available for it, so that might not be possible to recover from that. But generally what's going to happen is you're going to wind up calling in an expert like ourselves to come in and address the issue, either to stop the attack, recover the data, or put in place countermeasures, or all three, to ensure that the environment has been recovered back to your control. But from a financial perspective, depending on, again, the size of the organization, it can go, with 10 to hundreds of thousands of dollars. We had an organization that had about 4,000 of its 6,000 computers infected by a ransomware variant. It took them 6 weeks to recover from it. They probably spent about $200,000 in recovery.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And I know you already talked about this, but I really want the viewers to really listen to all of your knowledge and insights. So share some day-to-day best practices. I know you've mentioned some, but I really want them to listen and hear this.
Sure.
That small business owners can do to prevent a cybersecurity breach or recover from it.
So to prevent a breach, again, data backup is necessary. Having the technical infrastructure in place, like a firewall or an intrusion detection system, those technologies were once very hard to implement, are now very easy to implement today. Making sure that your operating system security patches are up to date. If you don't have the resources in-house, finding someone who can come in and do that for you, maybe paying an IT technician to come in and do that on a regular basis for you, making sure you've got regular data backups, making sure that you're changing your passwords on a regular basis and not writing them down, and sticking them underneath your monitor, or using familiar passwords. Using very strong passwords does help. User behavior, and making sure that your users understand the expectations that you have of them when they're using your data and your systems, because at the end of the day, the computers and the information on those computers is owned by the business, and there should be some level of expectation put forth to make sure that they are behaving accordingly. So having some policy in place that helps them understand what you expect of them when they're using your computers and your information. Those are some general things that you can do. Updating your technology. If you're still on Windows XP, maybe moving to Windows 7 or Windows 10. Believe it or not, there's still some organizations out there using Windows XP. We know Windows XP to be very insecure, which is why Microsoft has stopped supporting it. So making sure, again, your operating systems are up to date. Your applications are patched on a regular basis. Those are some things that you can do to prevent these kinds of cyber attacks from happening. If you're using Office 365, having an expert come in to ensure that the right security parameters are implemented to prevent someone from getting in and posing as an administrator, or setting up a false domain, which then allows them to send out emails posing as if they are part of the organization. So having someone do those regular checks can help prevent. Just like you would have a tax accountant come in to do your taxes, or you would have a marketing person come in to develop a website. You need to find those kinds of resources that can help you do this on a regular basis, to take this off of your plate. Because again, if you don't do anything about it, you are going to get hit if you haven't already been hit.
And the long-term prevention is going to be a lot cheaper.
Absolutely. Generally, it costs 3 times more to recover from the attack than if you had to spend the money up front to prevent it in the first place. And I do want to add one other thing as it relates to prevention or recovery. Have an incident response plan in place. Most small businesses don't have an incident response plan, and that response plan basically helps the small business owner to determine what they should do should a particular attack happen. Who should they call? What should they do if a ransomware variant is in the process of encrypting their data, or someone is inside their systems stealing data? That incident response plan will go a long way to preventing the full effective damage that could happen as a result of the attack.
Those are excellent tips. So what can small businesses do to financially protect themselves from a cybersecurity breach?
So there's something called cybersecurity insurance. Most major insurance companies offer it. It is one way to get access to the money necessary to recover from the incident once you've declared that an incident has happened. So I would suggest going out to one of the providers to see if they do offer cyber insurance as they describe it, what their limits are and what their requirements are. The premiums pale in comparison to the amount of money that you would spend on your own to recover from that attack. So that's one of the major ways that we recommend companies financially prepare for it.
How much should small businesses consider spending on cybersecurity?
So we generally recommend anywhere between 1/10 to 1/4 of what they're spending on their regular IT budget to prepare for cybersecurity, to protect themselves against an attack. And that depends on the size of the organization, the size of the IT infrastructure, and how much money they're spending on a yearly basis to manage that IT infrastructure.
And what kind of training should small business owners, their management leadership, and employees consider to have a better understanding of cybersecurity?
So we recommend awareness training. There are a number of solutions out there that small businesses can get access to that can provide that awareness training. And basically what this awareness training does is it provides some understanding about what threats are out there, generally how those threats are executed, and the behavior that an employee or a potential victim could use to protect themselves. This is something that they should be doing on a regular basis. There are also a number of books out that small business owners can get that help the small business owner understand risk, how to manage risk, how to understand it, how to develop risk management strategies as it relates to cybersecurity. NIST, the National Institutes of Standard and Technology, has put out a risk management framework that most businesses are using today, large or small, and it's free. And it's basically a guide for developing and implementing a risk management program for the business.
And when I talk to small business owners, I always tell them to make sure they're aware of all the different rules and regulations that would affect their industry. So what legislative regulations should small businesses be aware of related to cybersecurity?
So if you are collecting financial information, you need to be aware of PCI, which is a payment card industry standard, which requires businesses to put in place some minimum level of cybersecurity technologies and to show due diligence that they are managing that on a regular basis. If you are dealing with any kind of healthcare related information, HIPAA, which has been around for a very long time, provides guidelines and regulation around how to protect that, what they should be doing to protect healthcare related information. GLB, which is a financial, or SOX, which came out of the Sarbanes-Oxley regulation a number of years ago, provides guidance for assessing large infrastructures and putting in place the countermeasures to ensure that those infrastructures are protected. So those are the three major ones that we deal with on a regular basis. But depending on the country that you're in, or the industry that you sit in, you need to be, or even the state where you're at, there may be regulations in that state that may require you to do something above and beyond what I just mentioned.
And relative to cybersecurity, what expectations should small business owners establish with vendors, partners, and suppliers?
So if you remember the Target attack, which happened about 5 years ago, that happened through a vendor. It was an HVAC vendor that got hacked. Their systems were connected to Target's infrastructure. This happened over about a year period. But that vendor, because they didn't have in place the proper countermeasures, was vulnerable to an attack. They were successfully exploited, and that malicious attacker was able to get into Target's network and steal millions of credit card numbers. What's happening today is businesses are now requiring their vendors and partners to demonstrate that they are doing their due diligence to protect their infrastructures. Most businesses are required to provide some kind of business continuity plan or disaster recovery plan. They're required to show that they've implemented policies within their organization that, again, dictate what their employees should be doing as it relates to technology. They're also, in some cases, required to present penetration testing reports to show what the effects of that penetration test was, what were the results of the remediation efforts afterwards. So I would suggest most small businesses should require the vendors. Have they done a pen test? Have they implemented policies? Have they had some kind of risk assessment done? Because that'll help you understand where they sit in their whole security posture. And then you should also create a minimum standard for the vendor to adhere to if they want to do that kind of business, meaning transacting data between one another. That covers you because if you get hit as a result of the vendor, you're going to be held liable just as the vendor would be held liable because they did not take care of their infrastructure. So those are some of the things that we recommend.
Those are fantastic recommendations. So Cyrus, for those interested, what is the best way to connect with you and Data Defenders?
So you can go to our website, data-defenders.com. We provide a description of all of our services, and our contact information is on the website as well.
Fantastic. Cyrus, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And to those of you that are watching right now, if you'd like to volunteer, we're always looking for more SCORE mentors, so please connect with us. Our website is chicago.score.org. My name is Hannah Fernandez. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time on SCORE TV.